Good evening. My name is Mike Gregg. I'm President Pro Tem. I'll be running the meeting this evening. Before we get, or as we get started, Diane, will you recognize the members of administration that are present?
Yes, sir. Mayor Jamie Slutes. Here. Chief Deputy Auditor Stephanie Myers.
Here.
Law Director Justin Richard.
Present.
Chief Counsel Earl Wise Jr.
Present.
Director of Development Ted Hernkane.
Here.
Police Chief Jason St. Noy.
Here.
Fire Chief Matthew Heck.
Here.
And Income Tax Budget Director Lori Katagides-Boron.
Here.
Is there anyone from administration I missed? That's it, President Pro Tem.
Thanks, Diane. Let the record show that all 9 members of council are present as well as President Mike Slater. Before we get started, I'll want to just mention one thing, a big shout out to the Massillon Tiger football program for a tremendous year. Didn't end the way we wanted it to, but the boys they played their tails off all year, and they are to be commended for that, and as well as the coaching staff. So great job, go Tigers. All right, we'll start off with discussion regarding the budget. And get that taken care of first, and then we'll go back in order as we normally do with the committees. So, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. We do have some visitors here tonight that are specifically here for that, so wanted to be mindful of their time. So I'll call up first Ms. Lori Katagides-Boron, and she'll be able to start to lead us in our review of the budget and the department heads that are present.
Good evening, Council. Tonight we have with us both chiefs, Fire Chief Heck and Police Chief St. Noy. So they're going to come up and give you a little synopsis of what has been happening in both of their departments, kind of give us an update of the good things that have happened in the past year and where our staffing is. And then if anybody has any questions after that, or any questions on the budget, then I'll come back up and we can walk through those. So whatever chief wants to come first. So say, don't make me pick.
Good evening, Council. So we'll start off with the rough part. As you all know, for this year, staffing has caused us some heartache, especially with the overtime. So I've been in front of you several times throughout the year with budget transfers and things of that nature. On the positive side, we just hired 8, which took care of our 8 vacancies. This is the first pay period that they're actually counting towards minimum. And we are seeing some change in the overtime hours, and a marked decrease. The flip side of that is we still have a number off on extended leave, so that's why we're still battling a little bit. But we are seeing some marked improvement with the overtime hours. So happy to report that the 8 new hires are doing well. They have jumped in full bore and are enthusiastic and want to learn and are doing a great job so far. So I expect that would continue throughout. Other things that we did throughout the year, we did some station projects a little bit, just trying to fix some things up. We've been battling some things with one of the HVAC units at Station 1. We may have to come back here in the future to look at other options because we just keep battling the same issue and they can't seem to figure out what the issue is and try to fix it. So we're continuing to work towards that as we go through. Other things that we've done vehicle-wise, we did get a new ambulance this year, kept us on track for the 2-year replacement program that we continue to do. Allows us to keep the ambulances, these are frontline ambulances, up to speed, in good shape. We did add another one because of all the EMS standbys that we do now. So having that extra reserve unit allows us to do that without having to modify too much with the operations of day-to-day. So we'll continue that 2-year process. In fact, you'll probably see me or sometime early next year, looking to do 2027's ambulance because we're looking at about an 18 to 24 month delivery time. So, which oddly enough has come down a little bit from what we're dealing with here in the past. So, the other thing we did vehicle-wise, we did get the tower ordered. It is on pace. We were talking 34 months back then. I talked to the sales rep a couple months ago. We're still on pace for that. So that'll help out tremendously with what we're doing with vehicles going forward. So as far as next year is concerned, obviously the wages, you're going to see an increase in the budget proposal for next year. You've heard it, I don't know how many times, 27 pays is going to hit us, but also the contractual increase as well. The other line item that is new this year is an admin assistant for the fire department. We've only been talking and fighting for one for 15 years, and I thank Lori for sharpening her pencil and finally being able to put one in. So that is a desperate need that we've had for many, many years, and hopefully we see that come to full fruition next year. So other things that we're seeing, the services and contracts, things that we're required to do as far as testing on engines and hose tests and ladder tests, those costs just keep going up and up and up. So that's why you're starting to see a little bit more of an increase in the services and contracts, more so than we've had to do in the past. But again, we're required to do that just from a safety standpoint, liability standpoint, that we need to do those on an annual basis. So other things that you'll see, travel and schooling, we increased a little bit. One of the things that we did this year with our hiring process was go back and open it up to EMT basics. And that was to get a higher number of candidates that came into the pool, and it did work. We saw numbers go from 8, 9, 10 candidates applying. When we did the change, we had 61 applications. So that was a good thing. We get some people that are good. We don't lose them to other departments that are made the change already. So we'll continue to do that. But part of that process was the medic certification, which we're covering part of that or most of it. So that's why the increase in the travel and schooling. On the flip side of that, supplies and materials were able to decrease again this year. Part of that is because the relationship that we have with Med Control and EMS supply replenishment, they don't cover it all, but they do a good bit that helped us with the supplies and materials costs, especially on the EMS side. So we've been able to continue to kind of decrease that account and help offset some of the increases. The other thing that we've done over the last 4 or 5 years is we've done a pretty good job of replacing the outdated worn equipment. And we're in pretty good shape in that aspect. So we can kind of cut back again on some of those things, at least for a few years before we need to go back and start looking at other equipment and worn products that we'll need to replace again. So on the other side of that, continue with that, was the fuel and oil. We were able to cut that again. So I'm not quite sure what happened about 4 years ago. We saw a spike in fuel prices, and we were scrambling a little bit to keep that line item with funds. And now we've been able to cut that back down even more. We're going to cut that again next year, just based on our fuel usage is relatively remained the same, a little bit less, and then projections for fuel prices next year are actually projected to be slightly less than they are this year. So we went ahead and cut that line item as well. So hopefully we've done our due diligence of trying to trade some increases with some offsets with the decreases to try and minimize the impact on the entire budget. I know, talked to Lori, we're a big part of that budget, big need for the budget, but we've sharpened our pencils as best we can going forward for next year. So, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes?
Thanks, Chief, for the report, and thanks for your service, of course. First of all, you mentioned we had 8 on extended leave. Is that due to injuries during on duty?
It's split, off duty and on duty. The vast majority, or not the vast majority, but the majority of them are probably off duty. But we have had some on duty injuries with the extended leave. Right now we're at 7. We've been fluctuating between 5 and 8 all year long. It's a cycle, and I just can't figure out. We have one back and we lose 2. We get 2 back and we lose 1. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but hopefully we get that back. So we're supposed to get one back here first part of December, and I just had one go off on surgery back at the end of December. So hopefully that gets better next year. I'm looking forward to it. I joke around a little bit that we become in the geriatric wing over there, but hopefully we'll get some things squared away and get some people back, which will also help with the overtime big time.
Do we have a program or programs in place to help with like training and to try to avoid injuries, things like that? Anything?
Nothing formal. They do have, the physical fitness aspect of it. They've had some people come in. Studer has been one that has come in and worked with some of the firefighters. They've gotten away from the standard bench and squat, and they're doing some other exercises, which brings in the accessory muscles and things of that nature. It also brings in proper lifting and workout techniques, which hope prevents injuries. So there are some efforts being made. We've discussed some things about programs that are out there, bringing those in, or at least having some things come in. IAFF and the IFC, the International Firefighters and National Fire Chiefs, have a program that we've looked at and discussed, and look at different things that could possibly be brought in and reduce some of those, or at least work to reduce some of the workload injuries. Been a long
Very
day,
good.
can't talk. So
The new firefighters that we just brought in, I said there were 8.
yes,
What level did they come in at? Did they come in at the lower EMT level, or?
2 of them were already medics,
Two
so
already.
they're full bore and hit the ground running. The other 6 are EMTs. 5 of those are in the middle of medic school. We have one that will finish up here in December. 2 more will finish up here in the spring, and then we'll have 3 more that finish up here towards the end of next year.
Okay.
So
So we'll need some additional schooling for most of them.
for most of them,
Training.
yeah.
Okay.
So-
And then finally, the equipment replacement. So we have a process or a program in place for us periodically adding new equipment over the years, right? Are we still on schedule with that? Was the new ambulance part of that, or was that additional?
No, the new ambulance is part of that. We have been on a process where we replace an ambulance every 2 years. That keeps the frontline ambulances with an 8-year service, and then they got another 4 years in reserve. Even the reserves, sometimes they might be in service for 3-4 months, back and forth as they replace the front lines out for service and maintenance. But that has worked well. We've been able to maintain that funding with the EMS revenue and the capital account that comes out of that. We're going to have to take a look here in the near future as to how that funding aspect is maintained or being able to be sustainable to continue that. We're going to see a significant increase in the cost of the ambulance, and we're running basic ambulances. We're not doing a lot of frills on them, but we've been lucky with working with the vendor that we do, that they've maintained the cost over the last several years. That's just not going to be possible going forward. They got to continue to make money in order to stay in business. So, but we'll take a look at the upside of that is we're actually seeing an increase in the amount of revenue per run by about $60, $70 per run, which should help. So we'll have to see how that transpires. We started noticing that about the beginning of this year, the increase in the revenue per run. So.
And finally, how about pumper trucks or other equipment like the pumpers and the ladder trucks? How we stand on those?
So the ladder truck, the tower is what's on order. That is going to replace currently a 31-year-old apparatus that we hold our breath every time it goes out the door and cross our fingers because about every second run it comes back and needs maintenance. So going forward, we still probably need an engine, but we're looking at potential options on moving some current apparatus around that would put our current engine 2, which is a 2005, put that in the reserve status. We'd run the tower more front line on more first out incidents, and be able to move the ladder truck that we have at Station 1, move that down to 4, Station 4 on the south side. It does a lot of industry in those parts. It's a good vehicle to have down there, which would allow us to move and take the 1995 engine that we have in reserve status now, take that out of service, put the 2005 in reserve. But it's probably 3 years we're going to need to look at replacing an engine. So, and the same thing with everything else, the prices have just skyrocketed.
Right.
So,
And was it the ladder truck that brought Santa Claus into town this weekend?
yes. So we were hoping his magic would keep that thing moving through the parade. And it did, so,
Very good. Thank you.
yep.
That's all I had.
All right, thank you so much, Chief Heck.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. I have about 3 pages worth of notes here, so I'm going to try to keep it somewhat brief, but there are some very important things that I think everyone should be aware of going on at the police department. It's important for you all to know what's going on down there and what the future holds for us. So with that being said, I'll start with personnel. We've added 3 officers this year for a total of 49 officers. We're just too short of being fully staffed where we'd like to be, which in a year's time, 3 officers might not sound like a lot, but 2 of those 3 officers we actually put through the police academy. That's after the entire testing process, the background and everything, that just to get them sworn in as an employee of the city, then to send them to 4 months of the academy, then an additional 3 months of training on the road. One of those 2 new hires was just released today. Today is his first day. And the other one is 3 weeks away from being released. And so it's a great hurdle to overcome when 36 months ago we were down to as low as 32 police officers. We're now sitting at 49. It's been a long uphill climb, but we're in a really good place. Our fleet is also in a really good place. We currently, this year, put 4 new cruisers on the road. We have 2 new detective vehicles at the end of last year. And our current 12 primary use police vehicles that we use for patrol work, 10 of those are 2023 or newer. The other 2, those are 2022 models. Both of them received brand new engines on a recall that one of our lieutenants found, a not very well advertised recall. But they received brand new engines, and we're going to be able to extend the life out of those cars for at least another year or 2. One of the 4 that we replaced this year, 2 were budgeted for last year. One was an insurance replacement. By the way, that was not our fault. Somebody hit one of our cruisers and totaled it, so that was paid for out of their insurance to replace. So something good out of something bad came. We did get a newer car on the road. And then we also were able to get a new canine car for a 3rd canine that we've added, and I'll touch on that here in a moment. One thing that's important about that new canine car is it was partially funded by equipment and equipment sales and cruiser sales. We've taken our old cruisers, we take all of the equipment that can be reused to move into a new one, we put them up for sale, we take that money and we can reinvest it in cruisers. So with that being said, some of the key PD additions this year were that 3rd canine that I just spoke about. Lennox is his name. The price of the canine was around $11,000. $7,500 of the purchase of that trained canine was paid for by a grant. We were able to get that grant secured, and it really helped assist in making that a reality. Which is a great thing because we are going to be retiring one of our 3 canines here very shortly. He's going to age out, and his handler, it's bittersweet, but she's pregnant. She wants to start a family, and so by the time she gets back on the road after having her first child, the dog will be aged out. So, but we do look to get a 3rd canine in 2026. I'd like to have one on every shift. We have them, well, up until recently when she came off a shift for maternity, Light duty, we had one on every shift. I want to continue that. I think it's great for the city. We have one available to go into the schools during the day, one on afternoons when we're busy, and one on night for all the things that go on at night. We added a fourth SRO this year. As many of you know, we have the brand-new elementary schools, which they're beautiful. They're a great addition to the community. And the way that the schools are set up, having an east and a west, we have 2 dedicated officers on each side, one in each east and west elementary, as well as one in the middle and one in the high school. They also are able to act in tandem if they have a problem at one of those schools. So, for instance, if there's a problem at the high school, the SRO from the elementary, just 100 yards away, can just run over there and assist. It's a great plan for the future, and we're happy to be a part of it with the PD, having our PD officers inside the schools. We added our 5th and final detective. We have a fully staffed detective bureau, 5 officers, one of them being a detective sergeant who leads 4 detectives, 2 general detectives, and then 2 specialists. One detective that specializes in sex crimes and crimes against children, and then one who specializes in narcotics offenses. But they work really as a wrecking crew. I mean, they are just I consider them our A-team. They're some of the best officers at our department, and they do a great job. We also, for 2025, for the first time in my career, added a traffic officer. We were able to get that negotiated into the contract. That officer works Monday through Friday from 10 A to 6 P and just addresses all of the traffic needs in the city. We send him to areas where we get lots of complaints. We have him pick up the slack on parking complaints, you name it, anything traffic related. He takes care of that, and he has bolstered our traffic enforcement numbers this year dramatically. He's doing a great job. So moving on to the probably one of the most important things on everyone's mind here, and that's the finances of the police department. Overtime is down for this year, and it's expected to be trending lower. When you look at the number of overtime cost, you have to factor in a couple of things. So for instance, in 2024, and the reason I say this is because we just signed 2 new contracts this past year. In late 2024, December, we signed our contract for our patrol officers union, and then our supervisory unit, that gold contract was settled just after the new year, which was a good contract for both of them, and I think it was well earned for them. But the average cost per hour when it came to overtime was $48.55 last year. With the increase in pay, average overtime cost per officer over the course of 2025 is $51.73. But the key number here is that last year, at the end of the year, we had 9,313 OT hours worked with less people than we have now. This year, we're at 8,704 hours of OT worked. That's 600, nearly or just over 600 hours. We have 5 weeks left in the year, but we're 600 hours down, and that's the key thing. As wages continue to increase, I mean, even just a simple 3% increase, cost of living increase, you'll see the number go up. What I'm more interested in is those overtime hours going down. And so far they are. Additionally, sick time is down. I don't know how. We have one officer who's been out on extended sick leave a couple of times this year at no fault of his own. Last year in November, he received a kidney transplant, one of our sergeants, and it did not work. He just had a kidney transplant, and I'm hoping to get news that he's either going to be home tomorrow or hopefully the next day, and it is successful. So we're hoping that 2026 cuts that number, our sick hours, down. And I'm looking forward to seeing him healthy in our uniform again. So he's a great part of our team. Some of the additional funding that we have been able to secure this past year, I talked about it earlier, our Gov Deals revenue, just from selling equipment that we don't use anymore at the PD. We had $20,112 secured. That goes back into different funds. Some of it even goes into the general fund. Just we need to put this money back to use for the city because it's taxpayer funds. And there's no sense in equipment not being used sitting in a closet somewhere at the PD. So I hate clutter, and if it's got monetary value and we're not using it, I tell one of our officers to get it listed. We also were able to get rid of old cruisers in 2025, and we secured $23,725 just from the sale of old cruisers that were no longer in use. Body worn camera grant. I've talked about this before. We already took one check, took delivery for $32,469.39. And I just got word today that the second one is approved and it's just waiting to be dispersed before the end of the year, which would total, it's for the same exact amount, will total $64,938.78. That all goes back into that contract, or to offset the cost of the contract that we secured through council several years ago that covers body worn cameras and cameras in the cars. We just received $62,289.15 of seizure funds from the federal government. There's a program that's called Equitable Sharing, or the eShare program, and what it does is it allows seized funds to be reallocated for law enforcement needs. Our portion of a much larger chunk totaled just over 62 grand that I just talked about. And the way that that works is we're just getting a cut of these seized assets when they're either sold or if it's monetary assets that are taken, once they've made their way through the courts. And we get that because we helped work on these. We conducted joint operations and assisted them. We also have some more sharing funds. The cryptocurrency is the new thing, and we're working with Jackson Township, who is starting a task force on cryptocurrency, and we've signed an MOU with them, and they have some things going through. We're hoping to see the results or the fruits of that investigation that's been settled in the next 8 to 12 months, roughly. And we also have a $20,000 credit with our ammo and firearms supplier, which has come over the course of several years from equipment turn-ins or trade-ins, and we hope to put this towards the cost of new duty weapons in 2026. Our current service weapons that our officers carry are coming up on about 10 years of use. That's banging on the doors, getting it out of the cruisers, using them for training, using them for yearly qualifications. They're starting to get pretty beat up. Lastly, we continue to make improvements at the police department, inside the police department. It's important for the people that wear the uniform day in and day out to have a good place that's efficient for them while they're at work. We've been able to make more efficient use of our spaces. We've created a new office space in the lower level of the PD. We've renovated 2 other office spaces. We have a secure records storage room that we put together this year. It's more secure than it's ever been, and there's more improvements planned for 2026. So with all of that being said, I'll sum it up by saying, once again, there's a lot of good things going on at the PD. I think 2026 is going to be an even better year. It's our responsibility as department heads to be good stewards of the budget that we're given, and I think that some of these grant funds and these other ways of taking possession of seized assets and things like that and then putting it back to work for the city takes the burden off the taxpayer. So I'm looking forward to 2026. I'll take any questions you may have.
Mr. Ray?
Thank you. How you doing, Chief?
I'm doing well. You?
Good, good. So just so I can understand, you said that the overtime hours are about $45 or like $46 an hour. So if we're saying here we're budgeting what, like 290 overtime paid, that's what we're budgeting, correct? So it seems like if you divide that, it's like 6,305 hours. If you divide it by the 49 officers, we're at like 128 hours per officer. Is that
So I don't
fair?
have the 26, you're talking about the 26.
The 26, yeah, they
So we-
budgeted 29.
Correct. There should be a
200.
line in there for the comp time, which also because our officers can take overtime as comp and then it goes into a bank, we have to set that money aside
Okay,
in case they cash it out as comp time later. So it's kind of a fine line to walk. In fact, we've transferred multiple times this year because officers are not taking comp time, they're taking overtime to transfer it back over.
I see, because yeah, comp is sitting here at 60,000. so I
Correct.
see. Okay.
Correct.
All right. I was like, well, that's a lot of hours.
Well, another important thing too is we also receive some reimbursements over the course of the year for for overtime. One of the things that I didn't really touch on, I didn't do a deep dive into this, but essentially this year, in 2025, we've had $34,294 been reimbursed by grants. So we take part with the county in what's called a Violent Fugitive Intervention Task Force. Our officers come in and work overtime for that, but then we get reimbursed. So it inflates the overtime number, but we also don't have a good way to show you that actually those overtime hours were actually reimbursed.
Okay.
Same thing with our CPTs. Our officers are required to do 24 hours of training a year, mandatory continued professional training, and the state actually refunds us at least their straight hourly rate, but not an overtime rate. Problem is it costs us overtime to send them away from the job to school. And so I've really been looking for a good way to present that to you. But there's really no good way to do it,
Okay.
other than the average hourly cost.
Okay.
Last year it was $48.55 average OT cost per hour per officer. That's between high earners and low earners, and this year is $51.73.
Okay.
Does that make a little bit of sense?
Yeah, that made a lot of sense. I was just, the math to me wasn't mathing.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add it up but thank you.
Yep.
Thank
That's why I try my darndest to look at the hours worked, and like I said, we're almost 600 hours lower than we were last year, and so that is a testament to having more officers. That we're trending down. One thing, unfortunately, whereas the Chief Heck had mentioned about a geriatric wing or at the FD, we are extremely young. We're very green. We're a very young police department, and when you're that young, they need lots of training, and so we're constantly sending them to training, and so that also affects the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Howard Smith?
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, for your leadership.
Microphone, please.
Thank you for your leadership of our police officers. I was wondering, I'm glad that we have all our cars up to speed and everything and a good budget. I was wondering, what do you see as like the biggest problem the officers that are on the road that they are facing? Are you seeing any changes in our community or things that we need to be concerned about as council that we may not be aware of, an increase of certain type of calls or anything, or just a little
So-
update maybe?
Well, that's a great question. The city is constantly changing. I just started my 20th year in October, and it's definitely not the same city that it was 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or even 15 years ago. I will say one of the things that we need is we need to continue to pushing our officers through training. Our training budget's very important. I've worked with the budget director to actually to reduce that, but to use the CPT funds that go into a specific training budget to actually put towards more training for our officers. I wish there was an easy way to sum it up for you, but the only thing that our officers need right now is experience, and that's for them to be on the road, out there every day, interacting with the community, and just getting better at what they do. Youth is great because I love the vigor and I love the motivation of everybody to come in and do it. But I think when we find ourselves struggling with certain things, it's because it is a lack of experience. But we're facing the same challenges a lot of departments are. They need to be effective communicators, and the only way to do that is get out there amongst the people. I don't think there's any magic bullet, and I don't think you can throw another $100,000 at the police department. It's going to make us any better. Over 30% of our police department right now is under the age of 25. 5 years from now, it won't be a problem. They're all going to have 5 years at plus experience, and we'll be in a lot better place. So.
Thank you. So Chief, yes, I commend you for everything you do. I know I have kids that are 25, don't tell nobody, but I have kids that are 25, so I understand how that goes. And I don't know if it takes an extra part of the budget as far as training goes, is how we've had conversations about interacting with the community and maybe getting to know the community a little bit better than they'll know the people that they're talking to. And I know that you're making efforts to try to get that taken care of, so I really appreciate that. I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Chief. The final person we have to talk about their department today is Law Director Richard. He'll be able to give us a brief update of the law department, what's been going on.
Thank you, sir. Council, President Pro Tem, all, good evening. Just to piggyback, thank you. To piggyback, is that good? To piggyback just on what Councilman Ray just said to Police Chief, we actually had something planned with the NAACP last week as far as a Fourth Amendment exercise with some local youth. A couple churches were going to bring their youth down, and it simulates a car stop. You know, when a kid is 16 or 17, especially one of those of color or with not a lot of experience or bad experience with the police, it goes through all of that. The chief was going to be the officer. You've got a longtime defense attorney there kind of playing it out. And, you know, we try to do that. We often work with our departments together to better the city and the people in it. Certainly, I think one of the big things that those kids understand is they ask the kids in the car, it's 4 seats together, but they say, what do you want out of this? And they'll say to go home. And the officer says, same. You know, they just, that, you know, there's no reason to run from the police. There's no reason to grab the gun to do these things. So, but with that said, our budget is same as it ever was. We pay for our training through seized funds, like the chief said. We have a 30-70 split with those when they're found guilty. We'll make that part of the plea deal. And we take that to pay for all of our continued legal education that's required to be attorneys in the state of Ohio. So that's not an additional cost to council, as in a lot of our stuff isn't. We've got a domestic violence prosecutor that we've had for over a decade that we get through a federal grant each year, pays for 85% of his or her salary. The bad thing about this year, and now we're kind of looking at it, is this last year, we had some great people that retired. We had 2 people that worked for my office over 2 decades. And our domestic violence prosecutor and a longtime secretary both left us. So having to replace them, and now I'd be remiss if I didn't say our chief counsel is leaving us very soon because he was elected to the bench in Canton. So big shoes and big shoes to fill. So as of right now, our budget is exactly what it looks like. We've always stayed under our budget. We've been able to help with transfers. We actually transferred, I think, over $21,000 to the court to help out with some mismanagement as far as, not mismanagement, excuse me, some unexpected costs that they had. We were able to transfer from ours to theirs. What else? I don't even keep track anymore, but I keep suing all of the opioid manufacturers. And Stephanie Meyer can tell you, I think I bring in over about $50,000 a year now, and that just dumps right into the 1200 fund. So certainly for however, now those funds are earmarked for certain purposes that we can use. But one of them has been a great use has been the publication that the mayor has put out that has opioid awareness and certain informational things for the city. So I look forward to more of those in the future. We certainly have the money from these lawsuits. We did not, last time I spoke to you guys, I told you that you would be seeing me grovel for another attorney to hopefully get into some more of code enforcement and possibly also tax enforcement. We didn't do that this year. With everybody kind of leaving, it was status quo. And probably the only sour note I have to say about anything is unfortunately crime has risen, and not just in Massillon. I have 15 other jurisdictions, and they've raised in all of those. It's just unfortunate sign of times when money or things get tough, crime goes up. And unfortunately, violent crime, specifically domestic violence, has gone up in our courthouse. Now, again, I say that, so you'll have to separate whatever portion of that is Massillon, Perry, Jackson Township, Lawrence Township, all those others that I also prosecute, but it is up. So how do we combat that? I'm not sure. And we certainly don't do it with money, but we have good staff, we have victims advocates, and I can tell you that justice is being done. That's more of a retroactive, not a proactive thing. I'm not sure if anything other than once we get the people in the system to make sure that they don't reoffend and we see them again, that's the only way that we can really control it from our positions. I think that's about it. Anybody have any questions? Please. I'll feel bad because
Mr.
everybody
Gregg?
else got a question. Yes, Councilman Gregg.
Thank you. You mentioned you were planning to come to us for funds for an attorney to handle code enforcement and possibly tax, and you decided not to this year. Is it in a plan for next year?
It is, and I spoke about it last year when I actually had written down all those good things that I just said. But like I said, it was more important to do status quo and to continue to do our job well than to try to build onto something that, that we don't have sure foot as of right now. But just like all of our ideas, I can't call them my ideas, but our ideas that I've had with both the mayor, Ted, and also Lori, they're positions that will generate not only a tighter government, but they also generate revenue. Obviously, we've talked about and looked at a lot of different options for code enforcement. There is an ability for money to be made while also fixing and making the city more aesthetically, pleasing. The other thing, of course, is tax. About how many years ago, Lori? 4 or more? 5? That we attempted to go after. We got through the Ds, if you remember. 4. About 4 years ago, there's a Massillon ordinance that says that and this isn't about paying your taxes, this is just solely each year you have to file your taxes, and if you don't, you could be, I believe it's a misdemeanor of the 3rd degree. You could be guilty of that. Now, certainly, that was not our intention, were to hang misdemeanors on everybody that maybe forgot and or had a good excuse or moved or whatever, but we just wanted some communication with those folks, and we got it. Unfortunately, my office, we got stuck at the Ds. I think we were over 1,000 people that had not filed, and we were because we did it alphabetically. That's what I'm talking about. When we got to about the Cs or the Ds, the Donnellys and the Davidsons, we were swamped. So the idea would be to have a person to both be able to handle that huge docket, but also the increased docket of the civil and criminal penalties from not keeping your house up to code. So, yeah, that's on my wish list, but I won't be. We didn't think that it was appropriate at this time, so I'll sit and wait my turn.
I definitely would encourage us to get that going and especially on the code enforcement side, because I think there's a big opportunity in code enforcement in the city and that we've been struggling with over time to get that, to ease that bottleneck, right, to keep that going, so.
I agree with you 100%, Councilman.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or discussion this evening? General budget-wise, we still have Ms. Katagides-Boron here. If you guys have general budgetary questions. Ms. Harwick-Smith?
So we're going with alt care, is that what I see?
Well, that's what will be in front of you, the piece of legislation.
Oh, that's, okay.
Yes, yeah, that's a piece of legislation that is going to be in front of you tonight to pass, and yes, that's when we went out and shopped, that was our best
Yeah,
alternative.
we have that for when we're at Finance Committee. I'll have to bring that up.
Okay. And I just, if I can, I want to thank everybody who was up here. The law department is always very, very cautious with their budget, and I appreciate that. And both the chiefs don't hesitate to come to my office, and they're very well versed in how their budget works and where they need to get the money or where they need to move the money. So I appreciate that from both of them. And when Fire Chief talked about the tower truck, that's in your 1401 with the fire, that $300,000 is, well, you'll see that this year, next year, and the year after, because it takes about 4 years to get that truck in, and we put the $1 million down, and yes, it is about $1.9 million for that truck. We put the $1 million from the ARPA fund, and so we'll budget each year for that, but that, it should work out from the time expectation with that. So, yeah, I just want to warn you all, you'll see that for the next couple of years.
Great to see you looking ahead.
I like to plan ahead, so yes, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gregg, that's all we have for this evening on the budget.
All right, thank you. And thanks to everybody that presented this evening. And so at that point, we'll start our normal process, start with community development. Mrs. Creamer?
Thank you, Mr. Craig. I do not have anything for community development, but Mr. Lewis did make me aware that he has something that he would like to bring up this evening under community development.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me some time. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get a legislation request out, and I hope that after tonight's conversation, the Community Development Committee will see it appropriate to go ahead and have legislation on the agenda for Monday. But just to bring you guys up to speed, if you're aware of the Makeaway Foundation, it is the big green building on the corner of 3rd and Oak, right by the old high school. It is a local organization that helps serve people within the mental health community, the developmental disabled community. I am sure also those who would be also known as homeless probably are able to receive some help there. So they've done a lot of great good to our community, and I plan on inviting their executive director through the assistance of Mr. Hernkane here in the next week or so. But they've been occupying that building since 1983, and unbeknownst to probably about 99.9% of the city, that building is actually city-owned. And they lease it for $1 per year on 20-year leases. And they've had two 20-year leases, the first in 1983, the second one in 2003. So that expired in 2023, and they are no longer under lease. To my understanding, during these 42 years or so that they've been in that building, they have also been in charge of upkeep. I've heard that they have replaced HVAC systems, they have replaced the roof systems, they've kept up on the painting, all other structural maintenance and things of that nature. And considering that essentially we have put nothing into this property, and they have invested everything that they can to keep the property operational and serving their goods, and they do a good service to our community, I would like to see us put forth legislation that essentially transfers the property over to the CIC and sells it to the Makeaway for $1. The reason I couldn't get it in front of you guys in a legislation request was in working with Mr. Hernkane, their board had to have a meeting. We wanted to make sure that they would be receptive to this gesture. And that board, I think, met like late Wednesday, early Thursday. So we missed our typical deadline by the time we got confirmation from their board. So if you guys are willing to put it on the agenda for Monday, I'm sure Mr. Hernkane can probably get that director here Monday or the next work session so you guys can hear more about the good that they do for our community. And that's just the request, I guess, that I'm making of the committee.
Okay, thank you. We should probably get something from Diane. We should probably get something from you, Diane, if you get the language, to get verbals or email you back to get that, so.
Mr. Hernkane said he can send it over to Diane tomorrow, and then she can use that to get verbals from you guys.
Okay, we can do that,
So that would be Mike, Greg, and Jill, and Sarita. Okay.
correct. And then also, there's a stack of papers sitting here in front of me. I don't know who they belong to.
Did everybody get one? Take one, pass it down?
Okay. Didn't know who they belonged to, so thank you. That's all I have for community development. Thank you, Mr. Gregg.
All right, thank you, Mrs. Creamer. Next, we have economic development with Councilman Ray.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. I have no new business today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next, health, welfare, and building regulations with Councilwoman Cunningham.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I will pass this over to Mr. Lewis, who would like to speak to us tonight.
First, I apologize for hijacking the entire meeting so far. But I am leaving in 5 weeks, so deal with it. I just wanted to speak to last week's vote on the camping ordinance. I think the results of that ordinance were a combination of factors. I think a lot of us were probably still thinking through it. We hadn't spoken up yet because we were still processing, and we weren't necessarily expecting it to go up for a second reading. At the same time, Councilwoman Cunningham, having not heard any objections or any discussion, had no reason to believe that there was a concern because we had not expressed it, so she moved it forward. And then one thing led to another. I think many of us were a little bit stunned, kind of like what's going on, and ultimately it failed. In conversations I've had with a couple of you, I do believe that the one theme I have been able to gather is that everybody on council is genuinely wanting to move forward with some sort of policy on how do we best manage the concerns, the healthy and safety concerns that this has for our community of having people possibly camping on public property, and that has its own concerns. But at the same time, how do we do something that addresses the concerns we have for the well-being of those who find themselves in that position? So for that reason, I wanted to open up a conversation this evening because I believe we should probably bring this up next Monday for a vote of reconsideration, which would bring it back out to second reading. It would also provide us opportunity to make some small amendments. I know some ideas have been kicked around as to what we could do. One of those ideas would be, is there a way, and Mr. Richards here so that we can discuss the logistics of that before we get too into the weeds, but is there a way that we can have a process where if an officer comes across someone that is camping and is camping because they're homeless compared to just camping because they wanted a night out, I suppose, but because they do not have appropriate housing or whatever, is there a way we can come up with a process where if they make meaningful steps towards engaging with the community resources that are available, can we make that minor misdemeanor just not be there? But if the person is refusing or decides not to engage, then that portion would remain with them. So I will say, I also, just because before we get too caught up, that sheet that you saw, Councilwoman Creamer, that was, I wanted to take time to, and I apologize, I do not know your last name, so I'm just going to go with the name I do know. I want to thank Coda for putting this together for me. I did reach out to the two gentlemen, Gage as well, and asked them if they could put together, since they showed so much passion and spoke so well at council, to put together a list of resources, because I think that would be valuable to our conversation. And he was gladly willing to do so. I do feel important, though. He states that he is personally connected to this due to his background and the history that his family has had to struggle through. And while he appreciates our efforts to look at this in a meaningful way, I might be putting words in your mouth, so feel free to yell at me afterwards, that in some ways just simply pointing people in the right direction still falls short of really providing the assistance that they may need, which I can obviously empathize with. But as a city, we do have to do something, and not that I want to fall short, but I'd rather get closer to the goal than not at all. So I just open it up for conversation now to see what other people think or what they're thinking. And it's your committee discussion.
Mrs. Kramer?
I agree, Mr. Lewis. I do take time processing things, and that was one of my concerns is I didn't see the language that would help individuals to seek help and be on a path to get the assistance they need for X amount of times. Because I know the mayor mentioned when he spoke with us that the Salvation Army or ICANN would provide like housing for X number of days. You know, I would like to see a program. I would like to see possibly the health department work hand in hand with one or two individual community services. So they would then be able to monitor and get these individuals, if they want help, to get on the right track and monitor them and assist them for like 6, 8, 12 months. I just feel like, we empathize with them, we want to help them, but we need to do more than just have words in an ordinance. So that's my thoughts.
Councilwoman Smith?
I was talking to a couple people, and one of the things I was thinking about was right along that similar line, is using our health department and putting together, a lot of the police officers, they already have that information of, who do they contact to get a social security card? Who do they contact for temporary housing, permanent housing, getting on Medicaid, getting into, mental health evaluation. So I thought it would be nice if we made like poster cards, like budget it, and make the health department responsible for them. But these poster cards with these key numbers would be something that they could hand out at the health department, but that also our police and fire could get stacks. And if they come across someone, they can hand it out as just an extra resource. Obviously, if someone is not capable of making a decision, our police are the front line now, getting them to the emergency room where they can get the help they need. If some people don't want help, that's fine. If you don't, and I'm fine with working with them, but I'm not fine with them camping on our public property, urinating in doorways, just letting people be whatever. To ignore homeless people, I think, is absolutely cruel. There's so many resources out there. I want to help get them to that resource. That doesn't mean we have to provide the actual homeless shelter or the resource. I think with our budget, but I think this is a great way to help people, and it's also a great way to help our city bring more businesses in, because basically, if you have people in tents hanging out all over your city, people aren't going to go into that store. They're not going to go in that because they're not going to feel safe. And, they talk about, the homeless shelters aren't safe and this happens. Well, you know how many homeless people are abused, raped, physically, mentally, the whole shebang? It's not just, there's a lot of things that go on that never gets reported. And, being a nurse for 30 years in the intensive care unit, and for the majority of my career, I've dealt with the drug addicts and the homeless and people coming, because that's where they end up. They end up at the hospital a lot of times because, they need that assistance before they can go to the next step. And then we get them to the crisis center, or we get them to the mental health unit. All that's out there. So I think people looked into it too much, but I think these people do. We call for, if the police call, get them that first step, and they don't get to the next step, well, at least giving them a card. Hey, I don't know how to get an ID. Here's the number, and have a website. It's amazing. They can be homeless, but they still got a phone, but to just even to have that to hand out when you run into someone, because you don't know where they're going to run into someone. But but overall, I support this legislation, obviously, from the beginning. Thank you.
Councilwoman Holly Bryan Ruth?
Thank you, Mrs. Cunningham. It's a multifaceted problem with many, many layers. I think we all have experience with it in some way or another, and our experience is this much of what's really out there. As this body stands to govern the city and create rules that govern all and exist for all and not for one or any specific population, I think it's best to leave the care and the support services to the experts, and that our ordinance should state a pathway to those experts, which are fluid and ever-changing. One time we have this mental health service, and then maybe in 5 years they go belly up and they're not here anymore and we have another thing. Or best practice says we need to do something else. So if our laws say something that's overarching and funnels the care and the support to these agencies that are vetted, whether it be Goodwill just opened up a new Connect Well, which is a community-based system that does do expungement and ID and homelessness and food pantries and all those all-encompassing things. There are the experts out there that do them. We need to make our ordinance in a way that is enforceable and valid and practical, but that brings in those experts that I can say we are not. You know, there's many things that we can do, but we are not the expert on homelessness. And it's a multifaceted problem and very, very personal. I will say that in other areas that I've worked in, diversion programs work really well. So, but they only work, and I'm pointing because I know Law Director Richards is behind me, but they only work when you're charged. So if you're charged with a drug offense or you're charged with a solicitation offense, you can work through a diversion program with a case manager, go through your counseling, go through your drug and rehabilitation, get a job, do all the things that you need to do in your program, and then your charges are erased, you know. But then if you don't complete the program, obviously you're charged. But again, that only works if you're charged with something, and I struggle with the idea of charging people for not having a home. To criminalize that doesn't sit well with me. It could be any of us. It really could. So, but diversion programs are an option, and I think that was floated around here somewhere. The other thing is that algorithm that Julie was talking about. In the juvenile human trafficking world, we had an algorithm call-out card that all law enforcement was given. If you find a juvenile, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and that was done through all the organizations coming together, having MOUs and having a task force of such, which again, isn't this body, but it's another body somewhere else. So Mr. Lewis did have a conversation with me earlier this week, you know, just kind of troubleshooting and what we were gonna do. I do have some calls out to community players in the county that work with the unhoused population and what a best practice might be, what keeps the community safe, what keeps the community healthy, because we don't want unsanitary situations. We don't want persons who are unsafe around any of our community, but not having home is not a crime, I don't think. So I'll get back with you when I have more information from them, or they can come speak as well.
Councilman Lewis?
May I call Mr. Richard up?
Sure. While he's coming up, I want to share with you, last week I was at the police department, and a young woman was sitting in there, and she had like 4 bags around her. She had a coat over top of her. I had to sit down and wait my turn, and I spoke to her, and I said, may I please ask you a personal question? She said, sure. And I said, do you have nowhere to go? And she said, why do you ask me that? I said, well, you have your coat over you, you're sitting in the corner, and you have these 4 bags of your belongings. She said, well, I was in the laundromat last night, and I just got in I was evicted from my home in North Carolina, and I'm from Massillon, and I came back, and I was to meet a friend in the laundromat that was going to give me money so I could wash my clothes. She was a nice-looking lady, maybe early 40s, and I said, do you have a phone? And she said, yes. And I said, if you call the Salvation Army in Massillon, they will find you housing for about 3 or 4 nights. And I said, I have to get back to work, but I will give you my cell number. And it was a cold, wintry day last week and very windy. And I said, you call me when you get a hold of them, and I will drive you up there. And I gave her my cell number and everything. And she talked with me for a little bit longer, that the attendant at the dry cleaner seemed a little bit nervous that she was hanging around. So he called the police department, and they came and picked her up, and then they brought her to the police department, and that's where she was all night. But I never did hear from her. And I was willing to take her up there so that she could get started with some help.
So the first thing I'm hearing is a diversion program. And the unfortunate business, it doesn't really line up, because what we're talking about with those that, if we're to charge somebody for outdoor camping, that'd be a minor misdemeanor. So in theory, diversion programs work because you've got something that you don't want on the other side, generally a jail sentence. And if you don't complete A through C, then you get that jail sentence, and that is your motivation to do the right thing. The reward, of course, is that it's dismissed, expunged, and you go about your way as if you were never charged. With a minor misdemeanor, there'd be several problems. The first off is you have a speedy trial right to be tried within 30 days of receiving a citation. So if you play that out, police officer says, sir, we know who you are. You've defecated in front of this Mexican restaurant before. We don't like it. They cite him. So the question would be, at what point does he go into diversion? Do you then clerk that ticket, take it to the clerk's office, which begins the process of a criminal charge, or in this case, a minor misdemeanor? So it's not definitively in the Ohio Revised Code a criminal charge, because criminal charge is defined by something that has incarceration. So there's no incarceration, of course, for a minor misdemeanor. It's a speeding charge, seatbelt, even a seatbelt's worse because it's a mandatory $30. Everything on a minor misdemeanor, even the fine can be waived. So the idea would be, at which point do they enter into this diversion program? Who, of course, is overseeing it to make sure that they check the boxes that we're asking them to? Holly brought up, Councilwoman Brian Smith brought up a great point. Those boxes could be ever changing. Unfortunately, we may not know as much who those boxes are from month-to-month basis to be able to have them. Will they no longer give that service? Just thinking, and certainly I don't have an opinion in the matter, but to help you all through this, I really like the idea of the health department getting involved. That makes sense to me. Certainly we know that in these homeless camps, after a while, there is a health concern, to say the least. If we can figure out something, and then that takes it out of the police's hands. That takes it out of this idea that we're penalizing you for bad fortune, misfortune. I know most of you personally. I know that that's ultimately what we want, is just for the best for every tiger in the city. And I think that that's probably the route. If you do decide to go with the penalty as far as minor misdemeanor, then that's probably going to be it. I do not see procedurally which department, whether it's the courts, would create a special docket in order to have these cases, set them aside, and then set personnel to be able to track their progress or lack of. And quite honestly, I think it's going to buy us a lot of internal warrants, because people without structure in homes tend to not, they're hard to find. So when they miss their court date, now we have a large docket of folks that they're looking for these people, and they've done nothing more than got tired and took a rest. Yes, ma'am.
To follow up on that point, in what I was reading from other municipalities, that was the other concern, was that the contact availability, because many don't have a telephone, they don't have an address. So when you do charge them, then how do you find them, and how do you follow up, and how do you make sure they get the things, because you're chasing a ghost, essentially. Law Director, could you talk just for a minute, and it's a little bit of a shift, but about loitering?
Sure.
How do you define loitering in a charge?
Well, generally, I don't know if the ORC has that or if that's just a Massillon Municipal Code. I'd have to look at that, but just general common law, loitering is the idea, and they were called solicitation complaints in England, where we got most of our law. So solicitors that would come up, and we years ago went through a soliciting law where we actually got it off of our books, because soliciting or asking somebody for alms, which was originally how it was, but if they were to ask you for anything, our courts have held that that is protected free speech. So we do not have, as far as a soliciting charge anymore in the city of Massillon. Loitering is really to the eye of the beholder, and I hate that. I hate when something is just, trespassing is very simple. It's either posted and you shouldn't be there, or if that's conveyed to you that you cannot be here and you remain, then that's trespass, and I think that everybody is okay with charging that. The idea of loitering really just abuts to trespass. I would prefer loitering never to be charged and just charge the person with trespass. So loitering, and the idea is, say a shop owner has a person and they're hanging around the shop and they're just not buying anything. They're not being destructive, they're not being a problem, but they've been in there for 2 hours. So that's kind of that gray area where that loitering lies. And ultimately, it's a private business. That business can ask the person to leave. Now we're looking at a trespass situation. If they won't leave after the person's asked them to leave, then unfortunately, the police may have to be called. Yes.
Just one more comment. The solicitation revision that you spoke of is why you can see more panhandlers on the off ramps at Home Depot and all of those places, because it is not enforceable anymore. And that's, sometimes you feel like, oh my gosh, they were never here and now people are asking for money everywhere. I believe the need was always here. It was just illegal to do so. And since the revision of that law, it is now legal to panhandle.
I agree.
So just to kind of follow up with the original train of thought. So, because I agree, I don't necessarily think this should be a police matter if we're looking for some way to point people in the right direction. But then I start thinking about the details, right? It's all fine and dandy to say, hey, an officer comes across a person in need and says, hey, this technically could be a minor misdemeanor, but if you go do X, Y, Z, we won't charge you. But then who is going to manage that part?
Exactly.
And from what I'm hearing, from what I've been thinking and trying to process through, I can't think of a way, because officers essentially speak through their charges, right? I mean, that's kind of like how the court speaks through their orders, an officer speaks through their charges, so.
Or their discretion.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think of what the mechanism would look like that we would put in our code or our ordinance that would put the seek assistance first model that then is then followed up by, and from it sounds like, it doesn't sound like an officer could just be like, hey, came across you, I need you to go report to the health department and get these things done within 60 days and there won't be a charge. That mechanism is not one that you would recommend or believe that we could do.
It doesn't sound feasible.
What if we altered that, and I'm just brainstorming out loud here.
Sure.
What if somehow the ordinance said upon, first contact, initial contact,
Police contact.
police contact, no minor misdemeanor will be charged, but somehow, like, I don't know, a warning will be provided to the constituent. And then if police contact is made again, post 45 days and no social service contact has been made by individual, minor misdemeanor will be.
Now, who's going to follow up on that? Who's going to know
That
if in 45 days?
they've actually done that, when they have that second
That's
contact.
the issue. When you got an officer at 0200 and, hey, did you go do that thing I told you? Oh, yeah. Well, I can't call anybody to verify that. So that's the kind of disconnect.
Well, wouldn't well, if they charged them upon second contact and they went into court and they could provide that documentation, couldn't the court just drop it?
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm just thinking that would be like the only mechanism I could think of, like a warning, and then the second time, if there's a charge, but when they go to court, they would show that, no, actually, I have been doing these things, and the court just drops it.
Councilman Markham?
So having been a prosecutor both at the municipal level and the felony level, I tend to agree that diversion's great in theory, but usually you've got 6 months, 12 months, 5 years staring down the barrel at you to convince you to go to your class, convince you to come to court every other week for your weekly meeting. And I know very many people who chose 6 months in prison, 24 months in prison versus actually showing up. And they straight up told me that as a prosecutor. I don't see how this works as a minor misdemeanor. I don't see how it works as anything less than a first-degree misdemeanor where it's 6 months in jail, just because that incentive isn't there if we go with the diversion route. And I'm not saying I support we go with a first-degree misdemeanor. I'm just being realistic here. Having dealt with folks that have been in and out of this community on the prosecution side, 30 days in the county is nothing. 45 days in the county is nothing, so that takes us to an M2, that's 90 days. Maybe that would convince them to do diversion, I don't know. But then you have 6 months at the M1 level, which maybe you get some folks complying with the program, but I think we're going to end up with a diversion program that fails more people than it passes. I mean, the most successful diversion programs I've seen are Veterans Court, because they're highly specialized and are able to get people directly to their needs. Whereas on the other hand, you have domestic violence courts, which are great, but you have a higher failure rate. You've got drug court, which is great, but you have an even higher failure rate typically. And I see this falling sort of in the same category if we do develop a diversion program as drug court or domestic violence court, where it's just a very high fail rate with an even larger issue of at least a lot of the folks in drug court or domestic violence court, we know where they are at. Some folks that end up in this situation might end up in Alabama next week, who knows? I think one way we could revisit this potentially is, it sounds like one of the most striking scenarios that promulgated all of this isn't necessarily the guy, well, it is kind of the guy that sleeps on the bench or sleeps under the church and then defecates outside the church door. But it's the camps where folks will just gather together and have a camp under the bridge next to the railroad tracks, by the stream, or wherever. Perhaps we can look at this potentially sort of like a nuisance and abatement process where we get the public health department involved. Public health department is the body that's responsible for identifying these issues. And if the public health department has been notified of one of these camps and identifies it as a threat to the community's health or even their own health, they can take steps to abate the nuisance by notifying them, hey, here are the resources, you have a week to disperse. If you do not disperse after a week, we're going to have to do something, which is potentially some sort of charge. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud sort of along your lines, and we can deal with that later. But I think public health, less intimidating than the police officer, goes in there and says, these are all of the community resources, let us help you. If you choose not to receive the help, then we're going to have to take another course of action here.
I think that's, Councilman Markham, that's an excellent point. Two things to take away from that. You were talking about the most successful one being Veterans Court. The reason is because they all have built-in resources from being veterans. So anytime you've got that ability to be able to supplement or absolutely aggregate towards the individual helping of those individuals, that's great. You don't have those in domestic violence. We have to rely on either donations, grants, but nothing very primary. It's all secondary. So the good thing about that is that we've identified that the health department should be sharing or putting their resources into this. And to play out your scenario where they've identified a homeless encampment, they've tried to provide them services, they continue. At that point, we just find out who, similar to what we did along 21, along the river, we find out who owns the property. We speak to them. It was the railroad. Do you want these people here? Do you want their liability? Of course not. So now it's a trespassing situation. We didn't arrest any of those people. We didn't want to. That's not help people, but them sitting there living in their own filth isn't helping them. So we got them out of the situation. The mayor personally got them out of that situation, and they're not here. So I can only hope that they moved on. I know that we got some of them temporary housing. So I think that's probably the methodology that you're going to find that works, is work in the health department. There is a time to call the police, but I just don't think it's point of contact. Certainly if it rises to the level of criminal behavior, which I don't believe sleeping outside is. But if it's criminal behavior, then of course the police should be involved, and they will be. But if it's no more than just a person that is minding themselves, I think that it's important to find out specifically the individual, do they want treatment, can we get them treatment, and get them rerouted.
Councilman Ray?
Thank you. a lot of thoughts went around. I am definitely for not having public, camping in public, someone pitching a tent in front of Lions Theater. I had the privilege of speaking to a few unhoused and homeless people and people who have experienced homelessness over the last week. And I don't think it's necessary, this legislation in general, that is the problem. It's the fact that there is no answer to the problem. Yeah, I understand on camping underneath the bridge or whatever the case may be, and obviously this would probably be something that would have to happen down the line, but having a general space for people to camp doesn't seem like it would be that much of a stretch. Obviously, we have to find about liability if the health department is involved, or are we offering programs in that spot. What that does is it also benefits the community in a sense, because now you're not looking for all the encampments. You know where it is. It's right there. If you want to give people assistance, it's right there. I did notice on the list here, there's no homeless shelters in Massillon. So there's absolutely none. And if we want to be 100%, even if someone, general contractor, decided to open up a house and make it a homeless shelter, he would have to come to council and get that approved. It's not going to happen. The neighbors are not going to let that happen. You can rarely get an apartment or a multifamily apartment to come up in someone's neighborhood without it being thrown to the floor. So with that being said, there is no other options. I do believe, and it's just my own opinion, I do believe Massillon is a lot safer than some of our surrounding cities, and I think it would be beneficial if we had some of those things in our city. But obviously, it would take time. It would take effort. If this legislation moves forward as is, even if it's as is, but there's no other legislation to help offset this one, then that's where I think lies the problem. And basically what I was being explained to by those unhoused and those people who have dealt with homelessness, and that's what the answer was. It was like, hey, a misdemeanor, those things really don't matter. Like, I'm really not thinking about that. We're thinking about what kind of space do we have? Do we have a bit of independence? Can we have our own space? While we go through these issues that we're struggling with. I mean, a lot of people would like to get up on their own feet on their own, instead of being told to do it. That's just my opinion. And if you have any ideas as to how that would play out, I'd appreciate it.
I would certainly, I would encourage it to be a third party, a nonprofit that runs that.
Me
I
too.
don't think that's something that should be ran by the city, just because if we have essentially a homeless park, a camp with people in it, then we have liability.
Understandable.
We're now going outside, or we're getting really close to what gives us our immunity, which is, are we doing things that a city does, or are we kind of getting outside of that role? And when we do that, then we don't have liability. We don't have that, or we do have liability, excuse me. We don't have that protection that we normally have with everything else. So I would certainly encourage somebody else to do that. And then again, you have to talk about funding. You'd have to talk about, are we going to maintain a work presence there? Are we going to have folks work it? I just think it's a big taking on. And I would also say that there's just the optics of it. I don't want to use the word internment camps, but I don't want these folks to be in cages. That's not.
Right.
I don't want them fenced in. I can't imagine they want that either.
Excuse me, Mr. Ray, Councilman Ray, but we do have a homeless shelter in Massillon. It's the old the old Massillon Inn.
That's a domestic violence shelter.
It's also a homeless shelter.
Okay. Well, thank you.
You're
I didn't
welcome.
see that number on here. I seen a 453. Sorry about that.
Councilman Gregg?
Thank you, Councilwoman Cunningham. So I've been supportive of this legislation from the beginning. I'm definitely supportive of reconsideration of the legislation. And what I would say is, I don't think from the beginning, anybody in this body has ever thought about this legislation without the aid aspect of it, the service aspect of it, that we wanted a way to provide services and to get those unhoused into services that we already have. So I thank the young man that put this together for us. This is great. I wasn't aware of all the services that are available in our area, in our community. Mr. Lewis and I had a conversation with Judge Elam the other day, and he talked about the services that he is aware of, and he has a great deal of, as we know, great deal of connections. And he also talked about the aspect of, we asked him about the kind of the theory or the idea of, if a person will accept our assistance, accept our direction to services, that we can make this ticket go away. And he said, he basically said, like, say, you can't do a diversion program, but the court does use its discretion. He said, the question, if someone's homeless, can they pay the ticket in the first place? Well, the answer is probably no. But he said that he routinely waives those charges and also court costs. So it costs that individual nothing, but maybe if they continue to refuse help, maybe community service, which I think would be a good alternative for them to seek. But that's where I think we want to go with that. And I also want to say I trust the discretion of our police officers and of our courts to deal with these situations appropriately and not come down heavy-handed on a person because they're homeless. I've never felt this legislation was criminalizing homelessness at all. I felt it was criminalizing, camping on public property, which is the offense, not being homeless. And again, I don't want to sound callous, but as a council member, our responsibility is to the tax-paying citizens of Massillon that provide those parks and that public property. And the people that came before us and spoke, I would say, if any were tax-paying Massillon citizens, I would be very surprised. So, but in saying that, anybody that knows me and knows my family knows that we support those that are less fortunate, and that we don't want to see homelessness being an issue, being a criminal issue by any means. But we need something in place so that we can direct them to the services. And if we don't have some legislation on the books that says that camping or residing on public property is against the law, then we've got nothing to work with. So that's why I'm supportive of the legislation. I want to see it go forward, and I want to see us do the best we can for all the citizens of Massillon, as well as anybody that's in our community that's homeless. Thank you.
Councilwoman Kramer?
That is my concern. I want to see language in this that states what that path is. Just looking very quickly in this packet, the Homeless Continuum of Care of Stark County, it's a coalition of individuals and organizations committed to ending homelessness in Stark County. So that out of the 3 pages, that's the organization that I honed in on, because you want to assist these individuals instead of just kicking the can down the road. We want to help these individuals. And by what means? Yes, I threw out the health department, but, where do we go from here? What grants are available? What can we do to help them? And if we could work alongside this organization or other organizations, at least we'll have a means to steer these individuals down the path and hope for success. These are my thoughts. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Lewis? Councilman Lewis?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it sounds like we're all pretty much on the same page, and that's why I felt like it was important to bring it back up. I mean, we're essentially on the same page, and 5 of us fell on one side, the other 4 fell on the other side, but we're like, wait a minute, we're still together on this. So I would like to bring this up for reconsideration next week. Do you think it'd probably be beneficial for maybe you and I to try to have a conversation to see if we could kick around some language ideas?
We certainly can. There were a lot of good ones here, just.
Yeah, Chief Satinoy, if you have a chance, if you don't mind, maybe if you can get with Mr. Richard, you've heard everything tonight, express what you're hearing, seeing, thoughts you're having. That way I don't have to try to conference call everybody. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Councilman, I can do that.
Okay. And if no one minds, does anyone mind if I kind of talk to Mr. Richard and kind of lead this charge a little bit for us so that we can have a meaningful conversation next week? All right, I just want to make sure I didn't step on any toes.
And just to be fair, that's the reason I'm here this evening, because obviously a voting majority to speak with you in private it is essentially an illegal meeting. So that's why I came here tonight, was basically to have a one-on-one in the open with everybody. So if that's okay, I will speak with Councilman Lewis. And but you had a suggestion or a thought?
What do you think about putting something in writing in the legislation that gives them that thing that you know, upon first encountering them, we're going to provide them with resources? And if they need us to call, we'll call, or connect them to whatever. We'll get them there. We'll give them a voucher. We'll give them a ride. Obviously, if they can't leave that moment and they need some time to figure it out, at the time where they make the first contact and give that, they could be, you know, notified, these are our laws, you can't be here. You have a set amount of time, whether it's 24 or 48 hours to vacate. Now, that can be extended by code enforcement or someone, or it can be whatever this. And then, that way we're not even writing a ticket. Then say it's 48 hours, and they just, you know, if they just leave, then there's nothing else to be done. And we've given them the resource right upon first contact.
When you say
So we've helped
you
them.
assume a police officer is making that contact in this scenario?
Right, maybe code enforcement, maybe a fire, you know what I mean? I mean, but obviously, if they're actually in a tent for this, you know, it's going to be most likely code enforcement or police officer, you know, that's getting called about it. I don't know if we need to put that time frame in there. They got 24, 40, or leave it up to code enforcement to say, you know, just like, say someone has, you know, to mow their lawn, they might have a week or two to do it. Say someone has a $100,000 repair on their house, they might give them 6 months or a year to do it, or, you know what I mean? That we leave that leniency. I think we're trying to control the punishment, control the results, I just don't want people putting up tents, camping all over, and I don't want to help them. I want to help them. I want them to get help, or at least have that resource. If they don't want the help, that's their choice. You know, maybe down the road they will, or whatever. But that's where I'm leaning, because basically, if they move on, you know, and we help them get somewhere, fine. Maybe they have some place to go and they just move on. Well, then there's no ticket or anything to worry about, period. And if it gets to that point where they're just being defiant, like, I'm staying here, well, then your stuff will be removed. We're not cruel. It says in this legislation that we're going to store their stuff for them till they can pick it up for, 30 days?
Mm-hmm.
We're not throwing away all their lively belongings, you know, but if they just leave, then there's no punishment, no foul, no
So
ticket.
with the idea of, when you say "we" and "us," these.
That would be like code enforcement, probably writing the ticket, or
And
police.
so code
yeah.
enforcement would then take the property of a homeless person and guard it for 30 days?
Didn't, in this legislation, I don't know what page, I remember reading that we weren't throwing their stuff away, that it will be held somewhere.
Well, and that's, you know, it's great in legislation, but then when you get into the procedural.
Like, who's gonna hold it, how many
Who's
things are
holding
holding it?
And now what happens when, you know, a gold star is missing that was never there in the first place, but, you know, they said that there's a lot of things missing from.
So what do people normally do then? Like, they just make sure they leave with their stuff?
Sure.
And if they don't leave, they're still there, now they're trespassing, now we have to get the police and everything down there, and we have to remove them and all their stuff.
Goes to jail with.
It goes to jail with them? That's how they usually handle it?
Councilman Markham?
Oh, I was just going to answer that question real quick. Usually what happens is, and it's usually at the jail or in a detective bureau or at the station, and they go through each item, and then you sign a little form that says, yep, those are all of the items that were seized.
What happened?
To the law director's point, I don't think zoning and code enforcement's going to be necessarily equipped to handle that. I think that's going to be, that is a police function, and we're back to square one a little bit.
Yeah, we're start getting some things together. I mean, we probably won't have it ready for next Monday, but we're at least get some brainstorming going.
I'm not sure that's a police function. I would just
Yeah.
disagree with that. They-
We'll
our
get,
guys-
yeah,
our
we'll
guys
get the
that
ball
goes in
rolling.
blue Already wear 10 different hats as far as.
Oh, I wasn't saying like we're going to make it a police function, but like that's who usually does it.
Yeah. We'll start getting the ball rolling, you know, and the only time sensitivity we will have is end of year. Yeah, because if we don't get it done by the end of the year, then a whole new legislation request has to be put in front of council. So,
It'll already be written.
yeah, that's true. So, all righty. Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you for letting me hijack you.
That's all I have.
Sarita, may I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Could I contact some of these services and have them come and speak to you here at council about what they do provide? Like the Urban League, the
Let's
Stark County Social Support Group?
let's see how the next meeting goes,
Okay,
and then we'll go from there.
okay.
Thank you, Diane.
You're welcome.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Lots of good conversation. Next, Parks and Recreation, Councilwoman Harwick Smith.
Thank you, Councilman Gregg. I have nothing for Parks and Recreation this evening.
All right, thank you. Police and Fire, Councilman Markham.
Nothing this evening, thank you.
All right, thank you. Public Utilities and Environmental, Councilwoman Brian Huth.
Thank you, President Pro Tem. Nothing this evening.
All right, thank you. Rules, Courts, and Civil Service, which is my committee. I do have one item to consider for next week. Please prepare legislation amending Rule 121.02, Rule 11, Order of Business, to add consent agenda to the agenda. See attached. Councilman Markham, I believe you're the one that put this together, so I will give this over to you.
Yeah, so this is one can that we've kind of kicked around a little bit here. I know I've talked to at least Mr. Lewis and I think others here in the past over, I don't know, the last year or so. This is something that other communities do. At least one community I work with as its assistant law director does this. It's a fairly simple device that really leads to a more efficient form of government. I mean, even tonight, this is a pretty normal, if not thin, stack of finance legislation that we're going to have to talk about tonight and then vote on next week. What a consent agenda does is it takes these very simple, very quick items and puts them in a very specific spot on the agenda. So what you'll see is we still have the roll call, invocation, pledge of allegiance, reading of the journal, remarks of delegations and citizens to matters on the agenda, new and miscellaneous business, and before we get to introduction of ordinances, we bump it down a slot and add the consent agenda. And in the consent agenda, typically the person that sets the consent agenda is the council president, but we can tweak who sets the consent agenda in the future. Perhaps we could tweak this legislation so that our request for legislation form has, do we place this on the consent agenda, that the chair of the committee checks yes or no the week before at the work session. We can hammer that out later. But essentially, at the end of the day, what this does is it puts items that are placed on the consent agenda, like a appropriation. So last week we had Tractor Supply Company giving the police department $250, and then we had finance appropriating the $250. If we were to have a consent agenda, instead of accepting it in one vote and waiving 3 readings over here, and then appropriating it in another vote and waiving 3 readings over there later on in the meeting, we would just put it all on the consent agenda. And you would have council president read resolution number 2025, resolution 2, 2025, ordinance 1, 2025, mayor's report, resolution 5, 2025, all in the consent agenda. If everybody agrees that this is something that we're probably going to pass tonight, you don't say anything, but if there's something you have questions about and you want to talk about more, or you think should go on to second reading, or be voted on completely separately, you say, after council president says ordinance number 1, 2025, if I have a problem with ordinance number 1, 2025, I say, can I pull that? And then council president would pull that off to the side, and we'll address that separate from the whole. And what happens is we get to the bottom of the consent agenda, we have things that council, by all appearances, consents to. We have a vote to waive the 3 readings rule, and then we have a vote to pass everything that remains on the consent agenda in one go as opposed to just voting on it all separately. And then items left off of the consent agenda, we then either can place where they belong on the normal agenda or deal with them right then and there separately.
Thank you, Mr. Markham. So it's a bulk. So it's not just items with like causes, but it's everything that would be simplified.
Correct. It would,
And then at the work session, we decide the consent agenda?
well, that's one mechanism we should figure out. Again, I just tweaked legislation that is in place elsewhere, that I work with regularly. They have a strong council president there. Their council president is actually a ward council member in that, at the time, another story. That person and the chief executive of the municipality get together and decide what goes on the consent agenda. One potential thing we could do, again, is we take the request for legislation sheet that we all sign at the end, well, not all, but all committee people sign at the end of the meeting if their committee has legislation going on to next week, and maybe just put, should this be on the consent agenda, yes or no? And then the chair of that committee can say yes, and then we can get the piece of legislation added to the consent agenda rather than first reading or second reading.
And then when council president's reading it and reads the ordinance numbers, and Diane will still say a brief of it, but we don't get to say our summary like we've been doing?
Not unless you pull it. So
And then my other question that just popped back into my head, it only takes one person to ask to pull it and it's pulled, it's not by vote or anything?
correct. So this is essentially a unanimous consent device. So instead of asking unanimous consent, da-da-da-da-da, you read through everything, and if nothing gets pulled, everything gets passed, in theory. I guess you could still vote no, but if you're going to vote no, you should pull it.
Mr. Lewis?
I think this is a huge change, and there's probably some good and some bad and whatnot to be discussed. However, personally, and I don't know, I don't want to speak for Ms. Creamer, but she might feel similarly, I feel like given that there are 5 weeks left in this council, I'm not sure it's appropriate that this council votes on this, because by the time it gets passed, it'll only impact the next council. So I'm wondering if it'd be more appropriate to be brought up in January for a council that would actually be operating under this new rule for its full session. Because for a couple of us, it won't matter to us whatsoever. So I'm just wondering if maybe we're just a few weeks early.
And my only thought on that was just, we have 3 voting meetings left, so we have first reading next week, second reading the week after that, third reading the week after that.
We only have 2 left.
We only have 2 left? Oh, I did my math wrong then.
Yeah.
Well then, if it doesn't make it, it doesn't make it, it restarts. But what I was thinking was, if this council approves it and the rules change, we don't change up any rules on the new people, whereas we could be changing the rules in February, or if we pass it with emergency and the second meeting in January, hey guys, sorry, different rules this time.
My thought on that is, it sounds, I mean, it's a little bit complicated, and I agree with Mr. Lewis that, I would think that we would want to consider that, the new council would want to consider it as, if we're going to be changing the rules, that should be considered with the new council, because those are the ones that will be affected. So my opinion would be, we would bring this up in January.
And you only have 1 new council member next session. Mr. Townsend previously served on council for like 3 terms and 1 term as president. So he is very well aware. So he'll be able to get up to speed quickly. Mr. Patterson seems like a decently intelligent young man. So.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I don't know. I mean, we would just be starting our second term here, right? I guess. But like, I kind of know what's going on right now, and then you have people starting up, and then they have to learn a whole nother process. Like, I mean, I see the benefit of it. I do, but I think it's like maybe too abrupt. Like, it's too fast. Like, maybe pump the brakes on it. I'm definitely willing to consider it because we'll sit here and listen to 17 transfers when we can just say, we pass them. I mean, that makes great sense. I think it's just, let's think about it a little later, like maybe just a little bit later, but it's a great idea. I appreciate it.
Councilwoman Creamer?
I just have a quick comment. So if it is removed, if the item is removed from the consent agenda, and it states that it will be placed on the appropriate legislative portion of the agenda, first, second, or third reading, who determines what reading that is? Because if it's just been discussed at the work session, and it's now, if we get signatures, right, two committee members have to sign for it to be on the agenda, we still need that, correct?
Yes, so this would only be things that make it out of work session.
With signatures from the committee members, the majority.
So it'd be first reading.
So it'd be first reading, so how could we determine go to second or third reading unless
So-
we suspend the rules?
You could theoretically have something.
That's just kind of confusing to me.
Yeah, you
with
could-
that language.
And I just say you could theoretically have something on second reading in the consent agenda. You don't see that very often, but that's why that language is in there. So if you have something on second reading, it gets bumped to the second reading portion of the program. But 90% of it's going to be first reading, or the mayor's report, or accepting the auditor's report, or paying the bills. A lot of the very procedural nuance items that we can just read off, read the title of it, and we all agree that that's going to get done tonight anyway.
Okay, thank you.
So my comment would be, and these probably were comments I would, should save for next year, or for January if we consider this, but I don't think it happens that often that we have so many that, repetitive, that it warrants a change to our procedures. I hate to be, old-fashioned or stay in the wool, but I kind of like the way we've always done it. And I think maybe it would be better for citizens to be able to hear the legislation a little bit more clearly or more often, the way we do it now versus lumping it together and not discussing it any further than the work session. So that's my opinion. Like I said, maybe I should save those comments for January, because I think it really is something we should consider in January, not now. Mr. Markham?
Yeah, and just to add on to this, the stuff that gets passed in the consent agenda, you still have to have it read in the meeting. And if it gets removed, then we have those conversations. But this is the 95% of legislation 95% of the legislation in here is items that there's going to be no further discussion on regardless.
Councilwoman Harvey Smith?
Do some councils, how we have, we might have, this is community development, and then this is the finance portion. Do some councils take that and they don't have the two separate portions? When it's under one thing, they just keep it all together, or does it have to be separated like that?
This is a procedural creation that is Massillon and some other places. When it comes to procedure, that's us. If we want to look at procedure in the future, I'm happy to look at how we do things procedurally. But what this is it is the president reading off the item. If it's a piece of legislation, the clerk reading the title of the item. Council, do we pull it? If we don't pull it, move on to the next item, announce it, read it, pull it, announce it, read it, pull it. If it gets pulled, move it somewhere else. If it doesn't get pulled, we vote on it all together after it's announced and read.
So when you pull it, you pull it.
Yeah, that's my question. If you pull it during that meeting, where does it get put on the agenda? Does it go up under 7 to be read as a regular ordinance, or does it go to the next meeting?
So it would get read under the appropriate section. So if it's an introduction of resolutions and ordinances, then it would go under that. So if it's a first reading item, that's where we would find it.
My question is,
I could also tweak the legislation that just says everything that's pulled gets voted on immediately after the consent agenda gets voted on. So you do consent agenda, pull, vote on pulled items.
I guess my only question right now, before we go further, Will it be the wishes of this committee to bring it forward in front of this council or next council? Because otherwise, we're just wasting everybody's time this evening.
I think we should,
As committee chairman, I'd say we wait till next council.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you. Streets, highways, traffic and safety, Councilman Packley.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. Nothing new at this time.
Thank you. And finally, finance, Councilman Lewis.
I'm going to hijack my own committee now.
There you go.
At least one person found me funny. Thank you, President Slater. So please prepare an ordinance to appropriate from the unappropriated balance of the general fund income tax refund, $75,000. Again, we owe these monies to people that are overpaid. Are there any questions? No? Okay.
Can I just stop right there, Ed?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the consent agenda, getting back to that, I know you said January, but if we had 5 or 6 appropriations and we put it on the consent agenda, that means you would vote on all those in that consent agenda at the same time?
As long as 1 through 5 were all consented to, if item number 4 gets pulled, we vote on 1 through 5 minus 4, and then we vote on 4 separate.
So we're going to need to discuss this next
Yeah.
January anyway, so
Yeah.
back to Mr. Lewis.
I've already got some notes for how to change it.
Next piece, please prepare legislation authorizing the Director of Public Service and Safety of the City of Massillon, Ohio to enter into a contract with All Care for employee medical and health insurance for the period ending January 1, 2026, not ending, for the health insurance for the period of January 1st, 2026 through December 31st, 2027, at a rate of 7%. The Healthcare Committee already looked at this and saw this. This is a 2-year contract, so I did talk to Ms. Lori Kadagidi-Boron, and the nice thing is that this is a front-loaded, so the 7% is going to be the increase for this year, and for 2026, and then 2027, there won't be another increase, it'll just maintain. So that's a nice benefit of this. Also, Med Mutual, who I believe is our current insurance program, came in at 21%. We also had Summa, came in at around 10.5%. So this was the best deal as far as an increase. And quite honestly, I believe it probably fits pretty closely what we budgeted as already. So we won't really have to make budget adjustments for the current, for this rate. We do have people here if there are more questions or discussion this evening, though. Mr. Gregg?
Yeah, my question was, I think you just answered it. The 7%, I was thinking 7% of what? And you're saying it's 7% increase from what we currently pay?
Correct.
All right. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Anybody else? Next, we have a resolution directing the Stark County Board of Elections to conduct an election at the primary election on May 5th, 2026 for the purpose of providing electors of the city of Massillon, Ohio, with the opportunity to approve or disapprove an ordinance providing the continuation of an existing 2/10 of 1% levy on income to be effective January 1st, 2027 for 5 years for the purpose of city street maintenance and repair in the street department. So, you know we have an ordinance already. We need to essentially pass both. We pass the ordinance that puts the levy, to allow the levy to go forth, and then we pass this resolution. By passing this resolution, the city can then take that ordinance to the Board of Elections, who then make sure that the proper language is in place and puts it on the ballot in May. So we need both of these in order to do that. Any further questions? All right. You're looking like you're chomping at the bit. Nobody's got any questions. You schooled me well before this. I got this covered. All right, now we are up to transfers. Administration, reduce accumulated sick by 350, putting it into refunds. It's a garbage truck inspection refund. So we have to refund that back to the entity. Are we curious enough to hear why? Yes. All right. It's more of a curiosity than anything. You can come to the back, Mike.
Well, they have to register with the city every year, and it's so much per garbage truck, and if they have an issue where that truck does not go into play or has been broken down for the year and they registered over the amount that's needed, they ask for the refund. Quite honestly, this is the first time in 7 years I've had to even deal with the refund, so that's where
14
we've had two.
For me.
But we had two come this year, so.
Thank you. Engineering wants to reduce salary of the engineer by $31,400. I think he's doing a fantastic job, but whatever. I'm just kidding. It's a reduction in the salary line item. It's not actually the engineer's salary. Reduce the PRS by $12,000, reduce the Medicare by $1,500, reduce the hospital eye and dental by $7,700, and putting it all into service and contracts for a total of $52,600. And this is to realign the budget for the end of the year. Reduce police salary line item by $1,100, putting the PRS to realign the budget. For Parks and Rec, reduce utilities by $15,000, putting $5,000 to service and contracts, $10,000 supplies and materials, to realign the budget of paid expenses in those two line items for the end of the year. Mr. Pedro apologizes for not being able to be here this evening. He did call me earlier today. Legends, reduce hospital dye and dental by $1,600, bank charges by $1,500, supplies, materials, postage by $8,300, placing it into the salary for the Legends and the PRS for Legends to readjust for the end of the year. Fire Department, reduce the salary by $40,000, hospital dye and dental by $30,000, uniform allowance by $13,500, and this is going into the comp paid. Obviously, very similar to the conversation that we had earlier today with down being the medics and whatnot. Also putting in the Medicare fire. I do not have anything else. President Pro Tem.
Thank you, Ms. Lewis. And with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.